think? What's afterlife? No afterlife? Like,
So
yeah.
I've thought about this for a long time.
Okay.
So I was like pretty young, but I started like eating acid when I was 13. So that definitely affected the way that I think about it.
Yeah.
And I struggled for a long time trying to find like answers for the questions I was asking, and like all of this inner conflict and turmoil. And so I decided the best thing for me to think is the idea that it's outside human comprehension. So the idea that whatever afterlife is, or whatever God, or whatever universal being or essence people believe in or people connect to through those types of religions and organized religions, I think that it's all sort of like a guessing game. And people sort of believe what they believe, you know, to help them get through it, and I have no problem with that. But I think that whatever like the actual answer is that's out there for what God might be is something that me and you could literally never think of. We could have a million ideas of what it could be and it still wouldn't be right, because whatever it probably is outside of our comprehension within this reality, within this form. I think whatever it is just indescribable and incomprehensible until we possibly get to the afterlife and see what it is for ourselves.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So,
sort
like,
of what I've always found from it.
So like in terms of like the old notion, maybe it's archaic to you, but like heaven, hell, not really. You can't know. You can't know.
I think that those, you know, it's not that it's a bad guess. I'm just saying that like, because of infinite possibility, because of us being alive in this universe through like such a small possible chance to create life in a habitable zone from our huge star, like it's honestly insane to think about.
Right.
So whatever the actual answer is probably just something we could never come up with on our own.
Right.
Something that we could never ever come up with on our own.
It would have to be entirely original.
Yeah, and it would have to not only be entirely original, but I think if you were even faced with the answers and faced with whatever that might be, you wouldn't know what it is or understand it at all, because in this life and in this human form, it's just too complicated to comprehend, in my opinion. And I don't know, I guess that put me at peace, because I struggled for so long trying to like find those questions, and like doing psychedelics made me feel spiritual because I felt like I was connected to something
beyond.
Yeah, and it's a ridiculous feeling, but to try and like quantify it or describe it, I always found I was at a loss for words, or a loss for explanation, or even a loss of comprehension of whatever it might be. So I decided to just accept not knowing and accept forever questioning. And I love theorizing about it. I love talking about different religions, different theories. My girlfriend is a pantheist. So
I work with a professed pantheist.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I love exploring those theories and delving into those ideas, but I will never ever accept a single idea for truth. Because to think that we're like self-righteous enough to say that we're true or right, I just think it's like almost self-conceited, you know? I don't think we could ever be right.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's like actually like a dominant view. Like I don't know if you have any friends that agree with you, but
not
like
really.
I've met tons of people that have said something really similar.
Really?
And actually, I would just say I was like in a similar boat, right? Like before I was a Christian, I actually borderline atheist, like skeptical, agnostic, kind of like, you know, how could you ever know? Like that was the question. How, like, no. I mean, I'm talking about like certainty.
For 100% certainty that what you know is true is to be the 100% truth.
Yeah. And so like Christians oftentimes will like talk like evidences, right? They'll just be like, oh, this is like the cross, or this is the you know, the backdrop of like how the Bible is written, and it's like, you know, 3,000 years, 40 different authors attesting to one truth, like just crazy stuff like that. But I don't think that's actually like where I was having an issue with it. It was mainly like, I think what you're saying is that if there is a God, he'd be unknowable. Because just like how our universe is built, we see, you know, building, builder, creation, creator, kind of like that concept. Like you were kind of getting at that, where you were just like, man, like this is so complex, and like from the single cell to the universe, like that's insane. Right? So there's this like intuitive idea, I believe, that most people have, and throughout history, most people have like thought, yeah, there's a creator. I don't know what that is, but there's a creator. And so ultimately, like, I would agree with you unless, and so this is what got me, right? Unless that creator revealed himself. That would be the only way you could know something for certain.
Have you ever had an experience?
Well, so here's the thing. Like, let me explain that a little further. So I want to make sure you get that. So, like, in order to know something for certain, you'd have to make sure that nothing contradicts you, right? In the universe. I'm talking like, you have to know everything. Because there might be something somewhere that would totally contradict your perspective now.
Yeah, that's where I come from too, that thought.
Right. And so, And so here's why I'm a Christian. So if I have to know everything to be certain about something, I can't be certain about anything is true, anything is reality. I can't hold any moral positions, and I can't appeal to anything meaningfully. I can't say rape's wrong, murder's wrong, theft is wrong. Ultimately, like in the end of time.
Yeah, and those are like true nihilistic ideas. People who are like insane nihilists believe that no morals exist, they're not real or whatever.
In the ultimate sense, and even like famous atheist Charles Dawkins, he would say something that it's all made up in our heads, right? That there's no moral absolutes anywhere in the universe. We just make these things up, and so. So it's kind of like, unless there's this creator to reveal himself, we can't know anything for certain. But the Christian claim is that he did reveal himself. And and you're probably familiar with Christianity. You said you were studying religions.
Yeah, no, I love delving into different religions and what people believe about them.
Yeah, so it deals with justice, right? That we internally, as separating us from the animals, that humans have this desire to fix wrongs. That basically, whether that's skewed societally, like cannibalism, I'd say that's a skew of like morality, but that's a form of morality, and it begs the question, like, where does that come from ultimately? If we're all just matter in motion, no purpose, no meaning outside of what we give it. And so, for me, I'm like, man, that begs a ton of questions, right? And so, the Christian claim is that you actually know the God that exists. The unknown God that you speak of is actually a God that you know exists, and your conscience actually testifies against you. And I'll get your thoughts on it. Like when the Bible says don't lie, who hasn't?
Yeah, for real.
And then don't steal. And I've stolen. I don't know if you have, but I have in my past. And then Jesus, crazy things.
Yeah, ridiculous.
That
Old Testament, what the fuck?
He said crazy stuff if you look at a woman with lust, you commit adultery in your heart. Like that, you cheat in your heart. Like you look at a woman with lust, oh man, you're guilty of that. You hate your brother, you're guilty of murder. You might as well have done it in God's eyes. Like that's insane. Under that moral critique, that no one is good.
Yeah.
I don't know, what do you think of Christianity, talking about morality? There's a reason for it, it's objective, so that when I say, hey, don't hit that person across the street, that's objectively wrong.
Yeah, that's objective. I also think experience is objective, because possibly you experiencing that same action that you think is wrong, the action isn't even experienced or understood the same way by someone else, because we're all experiencing reality from subjective standpoints, our own subjective standpoints, and everything we think about that action has been built by all of our past experiences and all of our past thoughts to make us here today. So I don't know, to believe a full list of morals, I fell into existentialism when I was younger, struggling with morals and believing what is right and wrong. And I just sort of came to the conclusion that it's based off of everyone's personal experience. I only believe what is right is wrong probably because of who my parents are. And that's not a true original thought or perspective of mine. You have to work to separate yourself from the preconditioned perspectives and look at as many other people's perspectives you can, and then even piecing together what people's truths are. I just still, decide to hold none to myself, if that makes sense.
So to the, as an extreme example, to the person who rapes and murders a whole family, that's just your opinion is wrong.
Well, yeah, and that was one thing I struggled with for a long time, being 15-year-old, being oh, why am I, people discredit your thoughts because it's just edgy teenagers or whatever, but to really think about it,
you're thinking deeply.
Yeah, there are people out there, the people who might do that and feel satisfaction from that. In my opinion, that's really fucked up, and in my subjective reality, that's one of the worst things you can do. But in their head, who are we to tell them that the reality that they're perceiving, that is what they're meant to do? Who are we to tell them that they're wrong and what they're experiencing is subjectively wrong? And it's all it's a really fucked up weird moral standpoint to take. because like
people taking the majority, you kind of harken at that. What the majority states is basically what we accept as right and wrong. And it beckons the question: was Nazi Germany correct?
Right.
In what they did.
What do I look like?
And it's gross because to say that I subjectively think things are right or wrong is me saying that someone who believes to do those things is probably in the right in their mind, but it doesn't mean that I believe that they're in the moral right from my subjective experience. So you know, I can still say with honesty that I believe Nazi Germany was a terrible place and the things that they did were horrific, because that's my moral standpoint. That's where I've come from.
There's no meaningful appeal to that actually being wrong.
I don't think
apart from your experience.
Yeah, like it doesn't. It's a totally hard position to be in. And like Nietzsche even like wrote himself to death trying to explain these things. But like, no, I don't. If they truly think that they're coming from the right, and they've separated themselves from their preconditioning, because a lot of those ideas where they think is right, you know, someone who's being sort of manipulated by propaganda and what was happening in Nazi Germany and becoming a Nazi and believing those things, those people were conditioned and manipulated, and they probably wouldn't believe those things if they were conditioned and manipulated a different way by different people. So they believe that is right because that's what they've been told is right. So to say that they're wrong and to say that all of those people is wrong are wrong, it's sort of like hard for me to have that certainty. But I do, in my opinion, if that makes sense, you know?
I think you're one of the most consistent people in your philosophy and ideology that I've ever spoken to.
Really?
Because when you're trying to be consistent, you're living in that tension of like, this feels wrong, this looks wrong, but I have no way of telling this person that that's wrong ultimately. And so here's the thing, and this is what got me. And I had to contemplate it for a while, and I'll let you think about it, contemplate. It sounds like you think deeply about things, so I'm like, I'm stoked on that. That I fundamentally agree with you that all like rape, murder, all those things are ultimately wrong. Like, and I would say, like, you know, not only my opinion, but because there's an ultimate standard. Like, you can't know. It's the idea of like you can't know a crooked line unless there's a straight line. In the same way, where the morality might look really messy, it's begging the idea that there's actually a perfect line of morality. And so I would say that like that morality, that ultimate being, is our creator, the one who created us, and actually his attributes are described as holy, being perfect, meaning like ultimate perfection, and that no deed, no thought is evil. And so when you say like the rapist, the murderer is wrong, I think that rings with like that resonates with me, because I believe you're made in the image of God. And that not that we are God-like, but rather we bear some of his qualities, such as love, justice. We actually are reflecting who he is to an extent, but broken for sure. There's a lot of messed up things in our world. But you are actually made in the image of God, and your conscience is actually God-given, though societally twisted. In the beginning, God-given. Like, what do you think about that?
I like that. I mean, I like that idea. I guess my only problem with established religion is where it can take people, because if you don't have a solid ground in reality, then you start losing sense of what is real and what is not real. I had a friend that lost his mind. He was a pretty normal kid, and we used to hang out and do whatever together, and he had some problems with like benzos, specifically research chemical benzos that you could obtain legally, and he became addicted, and then he was sent off by his parents at 17 to this place called Teen Challenge, and it's sort of like a Christian bad kid camp or whatever. And he came back sort of just a little off, sort of just a little weird, sort of almost a completely different person than when I had seen him beforehand, almost like he was believing all of these things that he, before he left 6 months ago, told me that he did not believe with certainty. And I continued being his friend, you know, for multiple years, and then one day invited me to his house to do some drugs and watch a meteor shower. And I was like, hell yeah, you know, great friend, I love this kid, we've had so many experiences together, and go over. And it was the most scarring and traumatizing experience of my life. He drugged me with like 700 micrograms of LSD instead of just 100, like a normal hit. So I was like on another planet almost. And he gave it to me. I've done much more. I'm fine. I'm versed in it. But like to have someone give you that much when you think that you're only getting a tiny little bit, it's like, what's happening to me? And he spent the whole night aggressively trying to convert us to his religion, saying, do you feel that? Do you feel this? This is God. You know, completely delusioned.
Yeah.
He was delusioning himself, and he was sort of going crazy, making himself puke over and over again, chanting, speaking in tongues, speaking gibberish in the bathroom, right? Like, this guy lost his hold on reality.
He does with the loss of ego.
Yeah, for real. But at the same time, he has, like, he threatened us. He basically told us, if you don't see it, I'll make you see it. He said, you'll both see death and God are coming to you. And at that point, we're fucking freaked out because we're like 7 miles away from our house. He drove us to his house and he's threatening us. So it's like, I'm gone, walk out of his house. But that experience, you know, it sort of makes me think sometimes that, like, religion can almost take people out of reality, because the farther you fall into something, the farther you're going to believe it without question and without taking a moment and saying, whoa, am I here? Is what I'm thinking and seeing really real? Mm-hmm. And I've sort of seen it just firsthand eat this kid's brain. Right. And he is now ludicrous. The last thing I heard from him, God told him to hop on a freight train to Minnesota, and he did. And then he found a group of people that were getting high on God together. And every time, like, I love him, and I tell him, you know, good for you. Like, I'm glad that you have this experience, but to try and force it on me, it was very negative, very intense. And so, like, I just try not to fuck with it, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like, I love thinking about it, and I love theorizing about it, but yeah, the minute I say that I'm right, or that I say that I have the truth, I feel like I'm starting to fall down his hole of believing in something that you need to question, and you need to constantly be taken back of, so if that makes sense.
In the heart of consistency, and I don't mean to this because I think that was awful, I think that was an abuse.
It was insane.
And I ultimately, hopefully you have met other Christians that have not, or like people that profess a faith in God.
Yeah, and I do know plenty of normal
Christians. That like basically would hold to like Deuteronomy 13, Deuteronomy 18, forbids that kind of behavior. Yeah. And ultimately, when it says forbids, it's actually a reflection of who God is, and that he actually made us of sober mind and speech and calls us to such. And that's actually better for us. And so there's definitely like an abuse for sure. Like, but I would say, you know, have you ever heard the expression like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like there's a lot of trash in religion. Oh yeah. Tons of trash in religion. And that, but there might, like you're saying, it still intrigues you, still studying it. Yeah. It's like there might be a baby in there, right? And don't throw it out, right? Yeah. And so I say that also, I want to make sure you're consistent in your worldview. I want to make sure I'm getting you right. But ultimately, none of what happened to you was wrong.
No. He believed that he was right. He believed that what he knows as the truth is the truth. Mm-hmm. But it affected me negatively. Yeah. And to have that start to affect his personal relationships in such a negative light is where I go, well, how is that helping you? Mm-hmm. Because it got to the point where what he believed held him from being in my life and being my friend because I didn't feel the same, and that sucks, you know? I'm perfectly fine with him believing what he believes, and I told him that in that moment. I was like, Jake, I love you. You can believe what you want to believe, but I am not of the same place and same mind. And yeah, but objectively what he was doing to me and trying to make me see what he sees was his right. It was his version of doing what he felt was right. Yeah. So objectively, and even after the fact, objectively, he still believes that he did nothing wrong. And I can understand that. People can have different opinions of what happened. Yeah. And, you know, I don't hang out with him much, but when he comes to town, I still talk to him, still see him, but
I'm saying that the only worldview, and this is going to be a big claim tested, but the only worldview that actually gives that a meaningful impact is that you're actually more than just like stardust bumping into other stardust, right? That you're not just like a material floating in motion over a period of time, over a long period of time. But
formed into a complex being.
Right, yeah. Like I would say there's something more, something deeper there, and you intrinsically know that, and that Christianity, the God of the Bible, and like namely like the person worked with Jesus, that creates meaning in that story. That like my heart breaks for that experience you had. Yeah. Like honestly, like that, I can't imagine it. I've never even gone close to anything like that. You have.
I mean, it's terrifying to have someone put you in such a terrible mental space like that. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah. But like that's meaningful for me because I'm coming from a Christian worldview, right? Like I'm holding true to like these moral absolutes because I believe God has revealed Himself. And thus, only if the creator of the universe has revealed himself is how we can know anything for certain. And then you would probably ask, how do you know he's revealed himself and all the rest there?
How can you trust the reality that you've perceived? Because,
But here's the thing, I think we intrinsically know as well that I'm not afraid, I bet you're not afraid of floating off any second, right? Or that,
right. I've accepted that a long time ago.
Right, you're not like, well, like even like the law of gravity, right? Like it's not going to stop at any moment.
Oh, no.
Or like this conversation made sense, right? Like there's logic involved in this conversation, rationality, all the rest there. Like these are things, immaterial things that honestly make no sense and have no meaningful appeal whatsoever. And you even entering a dialogue into a conversation like this is actually screaming out for the idea that there's a lawgiver and that logic exists outside of ourselves and is true whether I believe it or not.
Yeah, the fact that I even think about it or try to think about it or struggle with it in the first place when I was 14, you know?
And all science, for example, it's based on induction, like the future will be like the past, and that all science is built upon that, and there's no meaningful appeal for that either, unless there's a God that's holding up the universe by the word of his power with intended meaning and purpose. And so the claims of Christianity give meaningful appeals and foundations for all that, and actually give like a rational foundation for why we're in the world that we find ourselves in. And I think like we live our lives like God does exist, but then profess, I don't know anything. When in reality, you're not going to treat yourself stuff like that. You're gonna put yourself stuff away safely. You're gonna go, to the store and act like this money doesn't change subjectively. When I go to the store,
like money has real value.
Right. You're gonna act like there is a God, but then you're gonna profess that truth is relative. And I think that's inconsistent, and that's what bugged me when I would say I'm not where you are exactly, but I think that's what bugged me initially is that man, like there is something beyond me that's true, and that people are closer and farther away from that. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Hold on, I gotta...
No, you're fine, yeah.
I don't, you're not supposed to see my YouTube video, but if you've ever tried DMT...
No, I've never tried, but of course, have you?
Yeah, I mean, the only closest experience I could say to meeting a maker or whatever is breaking through and then feeling as if I was in the presence of something that was all-knowing. Feeling like for a moment you have no subjected reality to stuff like money, stuff like what's happened throughout our life, and all you know and feel in this one moment is someone who is certain, and something that is certain. Some people describe entities, some people describe real beings that they've seen, but for me, it was like I was in the middle of an Alex Gray painting, feeling someone, something, but something that I choose to, still believe I have no concept of because I could only feel it for 15 minutes of my life. It sort of makes you feel like you know everything. Like this thing that is sharing its wave with you, like its space and its being with you and bringing you up into its form of thought and being is sharing with you every past, present, and piece of moment or feeling or reality that there could be all at once into one feeling of understanding, and there's like no words that can even describe the feeling and moment of understanding and feeling like at one with the universe or God or whatever people want to call it. And even after that experience and feeling those things, I still choose to believe that my perception of what that was is still not true, if that makes sense. I will never name it. I'll never give a face to it, and it will always be just a concept, just a feeling of oneness.
Do you value that experience? Or?
Oh yeah. I mean, that experience was cool. I mean, also subjectively, drugs are drugs, and what they're doing to your brain could really just be a chemical magic that's going on in there. Yeah, like, I mean...
Well, I think there's a bigger reality to that. Like, as a Christian, my first question would be like, was that experience moral? Would be my first question. No one asks that in terms of, like, the experiences you have, like the entity you're touching. Is this a good entity?
Right. Yeah.
And like, the Bible talks about these things in terms of, like, there's a dark realm, there's a darkness that, like, God says, don't even touch it. Just don't. You're my people, don't touch it. Because there's a reality to it. Like, he in the Bible doesn't say don't fly into the air.
Yeah.
Because, like, there's no words that say that because you can't.
Yeah.
But then it says don't go into this area, and that's...
So you must be able to get there.
Right. And so, like, I listened to a guy who just actually left the New Age. He was a Stephen Van Cars. He was a...
I hate New Age.
Like, yeah.
No
so
lie.
he was, like, super involved with it and, like, drugs and all the rest of it, the spiritual realm.
Yeah.
Just became a Christian. And his testimony is wild, but basically talking about like, man, you never asked the question, is this good?
Yeah.
And like, is it actually like, is it good?
Yeah, when I started doing psychedelics, I was looking for an answer to mental health problems, and then it quickly became, holy shit, there's more here, when I was younger, and I was like, whoa, there's something beyond this reality and perception, perceiving, and then it took me years of just trying to understand these experiences of like, is what is happening to me real, is what is happening to me good or bad, is what is happening to me benefiting my mental health, or detrimenting my mental health, and then in the end of things, it sort of just was a nothing, if that makes sense. Like, each individual experience is super subjective to each individual experience, and if anything, it just put me in a different mindset, in a different headspace to think about things differently, and to maybe forget these perceived notions and strip down my ego, like you said, the things that make me and have made me, and sort of look at this reality from an outside objective reality. And for me to say that either of those experiences were morally right or morally wrong, I would say it's just like not even a part of the question, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know, trying to like quantify a personal action that is coming from something that's not a person and also affecting nobody else that's not a person, I don't know if that's even a moral position to take. You know, if I'm sitting alone in my house, literally not affecting anyone other than myself, then I don't think like morals have even sort of any guise there for that.
So not to go down the rabbit trail, but is the only thing that's necessarily wrong then things that affect other people?
Well,
see how you can go down that trail.
No, that's where I struggled for a long time as a teenager. Is every sort of thing I would think contradicting itself again, and finding another way to poke a hole into something that I previously thought or previously understood.
Headspace of like, you know, ultimately I don't even want to know.
Yeah.
And like you can't know. And I'm saying you couldn't know, you can't know unless they're like this higher being actually revealed himself. And that's like the Christian claim. That's how I can be consistent in my claim that's saying that's objectively wrong, that breaks my heart. There's morality outside of myself. And then you know that. Your conscience is screaming out for that because you're made in the image of God.
Damn, I really like that. So that you saying that, like, I don't know. I sort of agree, because what your truth and perception is truth to you, and you believe that I'm wrong because that's your truth and perception, and I enjoy that, you know? Like, that is the shit that I live for, honestly. And people being different.
And I would even push to say that you know the God that I'm talking about. And that's the kicker. That's where, like, you know, that's where I don't know if you've probably heard that Jesus died for your sins, right? Yeah. Like you said, you studied it.
I mean, that's where my girlfriend comes in from pantheism, is saying that the God people claim is just the universal essence of that feeling that we've met before, brought ourselves into, her believing that we are just part of God, you know, made in God's image, made out of stardust, made out of that universal essence, and almost a central consciousness.
Yep.
She believes of it, as the central consciousness. Then, yeah, I mean, that's sort of where I come from, of like, it being all true and all not true at the same time.
And then, now, as a Christian, here's where it gets me in predicament, right? Jesus said, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." And then he also says something crazy. He says, "Unless you believe, I am." That was a claim to deity. That's in the Jewish Exodus. The Exodus. Moses went to God and he was like, "Who shall I say sent me?" And then God replies and says, "I am that I am," which is the existing one, the one that is eternally existent. And then Jesus says, "Unless you believe I am, you'll die in your sins."
Yeah.
That's what Jesus said. And I'm like, man, getting him right is what Jesus claimed is necessary for salvation. And like that's where as a Christian, I'm like, who is this guy who can say something like that and have like all this credibility and like all this background and all that? I don't normally get into that, but I mean that's like stuff you can like research yourself.
Yeah, but and it's a lot of stuff to read.
Yeah, it is, man. There's a lot of books on it, like things like Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, like Evidence That Demands a Verdict, Josh McDowell. Like those are all evidences, but that's kind of like under the preconceived notion that like basically you're coming from like a neutral standpoint, and like where the Bible talks about like us being slaves to sin naturally, and that we need like the Spirit to like regenerate our hearts so that we can come to Him, and then that ultimately the call of what Jesus did on the cross was He lived the perfect life we couldn't, and died the death we deserved, because the Bible says the wages of sin is death, That's why people die. It answers that question.
Yeah. Okay.
It is actually the execution, like God is executing people for breaking his commandments willfully, but in his mercy and grace sent Jesus, lived the life we couldn't, died the death we deserved, resurrected on the third day, and that call to everyone is to turn their backs on what we know is wrong, what you feel is wrong even, what you know is wrong, and then turn and follow him. And that through that, you get him, ultimately, you get to be in right relationship with God, but also you get eternal life as a free gift. Nothing you earn, because basically it says we're all criminals. Like if we're in the court of law, Jesus paid the fine, and the judge can let you go.
So we can just do it.
Well, and then we can turn our back, and then God says, I'm gonna take your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh, a fleshy heart that actually wants to do good now. That's different from anything else. Like that's the Christian call. I don't know if you've ever heard it that way.
I'm not.
So
I mean, I really like this stuff. I have
no gods, no masters tattooed on my calf. Like it's really meaningful to me. These things and people's viewpoints and people's perceptions. Like it creates every single person's life and their day to day is this shit.
These conversations are so many around the town and like talk about it. And man, like I'm never gonna be thinking out of our conversation. Yeah, thank you for hanging out, man.
I gotta get out here.
No,
Awesome.
This is the breakdown of it, but